Sup fucking nerds? So since you all liked the last video so much, I figured I'd do another philosophy video, and today we're talking about Until Then! So let's get down to business, shall we? In the last video, I talked about the no existence of you and me and how it asserts that truth is love, or more broadly, I talked about how no existence of you and me encourages you to use fiction as a supplement for the hard parts of reality. I asserted at the end of that, of my own criticism of that, and to where blinding yourself can sometimes be more harmful than it would be to just accept the reality in firsthand. And I ended this off with saying that I haven't really found a good visual novel or piece of media that found the balance between being overly realistic and like everything's got to be down to earth kind of thing, to being very fanatical and fantastic and being like, okay, it's fine to indulge into what's not reality. Well, I think I finally found it. I think I can set this down now. I don't need to carry it till the ends of the earth. Anyways, yes, today we're talking about Until Then, which, as I mentioned in the intro, takes place in the Philippines, where we follow a 9th grader named Mark Borja. Takes place with Mark Borja in 9th grade in this big city, and we'll go through his day-to-day lives. It's literally a story about a 9th grader going through his life. And so today, before I lose track of what I'm doing, we're going to talk about how Until Then encourages accepting objective reality in order to define what it means to move on. So the game opens up with this long, kind of poem-like sequence. I'm not sure if it's like intended to be a poem, but it's kind of poem-like. To where it's basically describing a character who we'll meet here shortly, but I have a fair suspicion of who it is, talking about how they miss someone and that how they went searching, but in the process of searching, they lost themselves. And because of that, they realized that the world had already ended. Now, if you can't tell, this game is going to deal with a lot of themes of what it means to lose someone or loss, as well as a lot of things of what it means to be lost, if that makes sense. Now, unfortunately, while I was streaming this live, my fucking dumbass was too focused on goddamn chicken nuggets and fucking Filipinos to even properly address what was going on in this opening sequence. I am in the safest place on earth. That needs to be turned down. She was missing that night. We looked everywhere, searched everywhere, shouted her name everywhere. See, that'd be great if there wasn't the music of God in my ears. You were at McDonald's. Where's my chicken fucking nuggies, Angra? Yeah, not a single trace of her, not even a ghost. It's been a long time since it rained like this. I love the touch of raindrops sliding down my face. I never knew what she meant by that. Maybe don't be a fucking dumbass then. But after taking a close look at it, it's a really heavy sequence. Unfortunately, I didn't take it seriously, which, yeah. And you immediately get a sense of what I mean right off the bat, because as Mark arrives at school, it becomes immediately apparent that he is very irresponsible. He did not at all do his homework, and what he missed was a presentation on Crime and Punishment, which is hilarious because Crime and Punishment is written by Dostoevsky, a fucking existentialist, which if you remember from No Existence of You and Me, it's a pretty fucking big deal. Hey, fucker, you forgot to list important Mark traits, like the fact that he plays the piano, or the fact that he lives alone, and that both of his parents work abroad. You know, important things for the future part of this video. As a side note, the developers went way too hard on the fucking social media system in this game. The social media system has a like system, has a share system, has a comment section. It has link embeds for fucking whatever reason. I don't know why I have the ability to go to a news article and click on a fucking embed link inside a game, but that's a thing I can do. But all this is for the sake of world building, and I could spend hours talking about just how much this is a fucking genius move, because it allows you to control how much of the world you learn outside of what is necessary for the story, but it's just so cool of how in depth they went with it. And so Mark arrives at school and immediately tries to do a presentation with Ryan. The only thing you need to know about Ryan is ball is life. He's all about sports. He's not really a big character for most of the story. And somehow, Mark fucking succeeds in doing an entire presentation and doing the slides for an entire presentation a few minutes before class begins. Don't ask me how they pulled that off, but they did. In some ways, it's here you can see the other side of Mark, to where he's actually kind of really smart. He actually knows what he's talking about a lot of the time, and he's a smart kid. He just doesn't ever use it. And so you really see this conflict with Mark a lot of the time, to where like he knows what he should be doing, but he doesn't do it, if you know what I mean. Or he'd be a smart ass about it. It's also here that we get introduced to Miss Class President herself, Louise. Louise is kind of socially inept girl who's very smart, but also very strict. She patronizes Mark a lot for good fucking reason. And overall, she's just kind of an authority figure without being an authority figure, if that makes sense. She does play a pretty important role throughout the story, but for right now, all you need to know about her is that she's class president. She really has a thing for physics, and she's a pretty strict, albeit socially inadequate person. Mark then somehow aces the presentation with Elise's help, and it's here that we get our first inclination that things are not all as they should be. Louise talks about how there is rain, strangely, even though Mark points out that it hasn't rained for a month. More on that a lot later. Anyways, there's no time for any of that fucking nonsense, because we immediately move on to lunchtime, to where we get to meet Mark's two best friends. Kathy. Starting off strong. Kathy is the best girl, period. You do not fight me over Kathy. Kathy is this bisexual girl who really is cheerful and upbeat constantly and loves to poke fun at Mark's bullshit.
Hey, Mark! Right, who is it? Oh, it's the it's the nerdy girl that was totally fawning over him during his fucking presentation. Hi, Mark, I'm classmates. And today I'm dumb. Hey, Jaggy, I think this is yours. Oh, please, love me. What? What does that mean? In the parameters of the Philippines, they have schools. We need to stop talking about the Philippines, okay? Before I get fucking canceled. Hey, shut your foul mouth. You're lucky the seniors aren't here. Or you'd be dead meat.
But otherwise, she's just all around a joy to be around and has given me the most laughs out of any character in the entire fucking game. The other one is Riddell. Riddell is a surprisingly successful, for a fucking 9th grader, photographer who got so good at it that he started producing a film. He's at that point as a 15-year-old where he's already producing a film, which is insane. That's like a prodigy level standard. So much so, though, that he almost seems distant from Kathy and Mark, if that makes sense. After the school day is done, Mark goes home. That should not have tripped me up. What the fuck is wrong with me? Mark goes home and gossips on his phone a lot, and then to his surprise, gets invited by Elise to go to a chess tournament with some of his friends. Fuck. And then to his surprise, gets invited by Elise to a chess tournament with some of her friends. Mark, being the teenage boy that he is, interprets this as a form of flirting. And of course, all of his friends make fun of him for it. But that's besides the point. So then we move on to the chess tournament, and we meet Sophia, Luis's best friend, an incredibly upbeat and cheerful girl who unfortunately has a sick grandma that is like this because of a certain event called the Ruling. The Ruling is this big, huge, cataclysmic event that completely upended everything about this world that is taking place in. So much so that some people considered it the end of the world at the time, and that it was God's judgment or whatever.
You know his mother or something? I don't know, because they know the same song, which is impossible. The Ruling. EU's death near 10K. Whole 21 earthquakes. What the fuck? Guys, this wasn't just a freak accident. This is unheard of. What the fuck?
It's an impossibly cataclysmic event, to the point to where like everyone questions why it happened, how it happened, and now everyone's trying to move past that it happened. We then have a one-on-one chat with Louise where she talks about how she's had some really weird memories that she can't quite explain, and that's why she must have thought like the rain was happening even though it never did. Mark even checks the weather to prove her wrong because Mark is Mark. But besides that, afterwards, we find out that Louise has a fucking boyfriend. And so Mark is forced to third wheel while they go and get food. Which, yeah, that makes sense. Afterwards, Mark hangs out with Kathy, with, unfortunately, Riddell being absent. And it's here to where, once again, being teenagers, they start stalking, in quotations, the new incoming freshman girls that are coming to their school as transferees. It's here, though, to where we have a completely different change in development. Kathy gets a phone call from her parents, and it seems a little grim, and I call this the first sus phone call, and you'll understand what I mean by that later. We also learn that Kathy is quite obsessed with rain as it begins to rain around us. She admits to liking the rain, and then talks about how a butterfly in the rain will die. Which is a metaphor for what's to come. We will get to it, but to put simply, Kathy is not just making small talk here, if that makes sense. Kathy, in fact, sometimes views herself in some ways as a fragile butterfly. And in fact, the symbolism of like moths and butterflies completely follow Kathy throughout most of this story in a lot of ways. Like she eventually has a dress where she has butterflies in her hair. Actually, am I remembering this correctly? I think it does. I'll have to double check that actually. Editing me will cover for that.
Back fuckers, and yeah, past me is absolutely right. Kathy's prom dress has a butterfly in her hair. It's not really all that discreet, honestly, it's right there. But I'll use this as a chance to talk about the symbolism of butterflies and the rain throughout the story. Because you see, I forgot to do that. It seems to me anyway that butterflies represent a person who is about to go missing or is already lost. Because the only two other butterflies we see in this story are Jake and fucking Mark's mother, and we'll get to why that's significant, but basically just understand for now that those two are considered lost and take the form of butterflies, okay? I know that sounds stupid, but if you played the game, you know, dum-dum. And as for rain, well, as we established, rain kills butterflies, and whenever there's rain, something disastrous seems to happen in the game. Or rather, quite the opposite, actually. Whenever something disastrous happens, the rain is always seemingly present. So, in a way, the rain is what kills butterflies. There you have it. Done. Boom. Bada bing. I'm fucking out. Peace.
Anyways, we then move to the next day to where Mark forgets to make his art project. Because, you know, 7 minutes is enough time to make an entire art project. That's what Mark thinks anyway, and immediately sprints to the hallway to go run for supplies to make said art project. Now, I'm no artist, but anything, can I really claim to not be an artist? I mean, I draw, I do 3D modeling. Okay, I might be more of an artist than I think. Anyways, ignoring that revelation, Mark sprints through the hallway and immediately, after dodging and sometimes failing to dodge other people's stuff, runs into someone. Because why the fuck would you sprint in a crowded school hallway, Mark? Good God, Mark. What the fuck, Mark? And here's where we're gonna pause before moving on. Let's recap what we know before we go on to the latter half of this story. In a lot of ways, Mark's life kind of sucks. Let's be real here. He doesn't have any parents ever around because they're all working abroad, and his two friends, one of them is very distant and the other seems to have troubles at home, and pretty much all he does is school and then back home to do whatever. And when he's at home, he's constantly not feeling the greatest, so he doesn't ever actually do his work, and he's constantly late to doing things, and he's constantly getting other people frustrated at him because of that. Yeah, Mark's life kind of sucks. It seems like, to me anyway, that he's holding on to something, or that he can't get over something. This is where we talk a little bit about how I think, although the game never outright says it, I think in a lot of ways, Mark is kind of struggling through depression, or some kind of loss. He's carrying a burden. How does Mark get out of this situation? And that's where the second half of the story continues. What's next from here? As I last touched on, Mark just ran straight fucking into this girl.
Leap? Out of all the numbers from 0 to 50, I got a score of 13.
Who is named Nicole. And Nicole is about to change his entire life. I shall dub Nicole the girl who struggles to move on. And you'll see why I say that in a bit. So Nicole and Mark run into each other, and they're of course forced to go to the principal's office because Mark knocked over the paint that Nicole was currently painting with, causing a huge mess and causing a mess on Nicole, which makes her super angry and blows up on Mark. Rightfully so. What the fuck, Mark? Why are you running in the hallway, Mark? But anyways, and this is our official formal introduction to Nicole, who is probably one of the more important characters of the story. Her and Mark kind of bounce off each other in such a way that they're complete opposites and who they are, but also the same in a lot of ways too. They both are kind of stuck up in their own ways. You'll see that later down the line. But Nicole is also what they call a ruling victim. And as I already touched on, the ruling was this cataclysmic event. And she actually went through that and is trying to move on from that. So obviously this characterizes Nicole as a person who's undergone a very traumatic experience. And this pretty much influences every part of her life, whether or not she knows it or not. So afterwards, Mark and Nicole head to Nicole's house because he agreed to help fix everything after what he did. He agreed to help Nicole fix her art project and also do his because the principal gave them its section time. It's a whole thing. Mark gets to see Nicole's house, and in Nicole's house there's a painting with a boy, and we'll eventually learn that that boy's name was Jake. He was Nicole's best friend before the ruling happened. Jake, unfortunately, is probably the biggest struggle for Nicole ever. It's why she can't move on from the ruling for most of this next chapter of her life and of Mark's life. And after this, we get to see a big insight on this too, to where when they both sit down to paint, Mark starts painting in pure black, which a pretty good representation of who he is at this point. When Nicole's talking to him and questioning about his life and is trying to be a good girl and talk about normal things like what your families do, what your parents do for work, or do you have any siblings, stuff like that. And Mark is of course he's dodging the question basically, constantly over and over again. And then when Nicole starts questioning him about why he's always doing things last minute, doing things low effort like he is now with the art project, he simply just responds that it's easier, in quotations. And Nicole she calls him out for it. She's like, no, it's not. What the fuck are you doing? That's stupid. Isn't it more fun to actually have fun with your life and to actually do these things properly? And it kind of gives a standstill to where, while Mark's painting this low effort project all in black, and his nihilistic view that nothing really matters and that what really matters, what his life is amounted to doesn't really matter, and he doesn't really care about what anything's happening. Nicole grabs it and she starts painting something cute over it.
Hold on. I don't get it. Why do you live like this? That's a fucking great question, actually. Why? Shut up. I need to concentrate. I'm channeling my inner Pollock. I mean, are there even any upsides? Ask our classmate Kyle. He crams way more than I do. He's the true expert. The truth is, there isn't really upside. Okay. Let's have a talk about cramming and mental health, right? Most crammers don't want to be crammers. They just happen to be crammers. You know what? I suggest that could definitely use more effort. I suggest not spending my precious effort on this. Could also use more color. You know what I mean? I've no time for your color theory bullcrap. You don't need to know color theory. You just have to, you know, let it shine. We didn't buy glossy paint. Such a fucking literalist. I mean, are you seriously okay with this? Settling for this Pollock ripoff? Look, all I need to do is get the job done. The least possible effort. But do you even find enjoyment in it? Yeah, like, realistically, of course not. Not that it matters, right? Yeah, see, like, crammers don't enjoy cramming. That's just... Yeah, oh. Hey! Watch. I'll show you how it's done. Oh, great. Someone's doing the dirty work for me. Thank you so much. Hey, look at me. Fine, fine. We can still turn this pitiful artwork to a lively one. Just you wait and see. Hooray. I think it needs more color. Okay. Dash of white. Splash of red. How it feels talking to an artist. Like, I said 3D modeling because I'm colorblind, can't do fucking proper colors, like, for worth shit. Drop of blue. Like, I especially can't do, like, fucking rendering and drawings. I just can't. I don't know why. Do you see it? It's coming together now. Whoa. It's much better now, right? I don't like saying this to your face, but it is. You see, Mark? I just enjoy the things I do. And whenever I find that enjoyment, everything else naturally shines. If these two become a thing, I'm gonna laugh my fucking ass off. She's probably right. Everything shines. You just have to find that spark. You're crazy.
And this is where we get to dichotomies and binary opposition.
Whoa there, dumbass. You're about to start talking about something completely irrelevant and completely unimportant, so I gotta step in and save your dumbass from talking about something stupid. You see, we are gonna just completely ignore that. We're gonna go back to talking about the very ending quote there. Finding that spark. It's probably what I'm going to dub step 0.5 of moving on. Because you see, Nicole is talking about the idea of taking small things in life and letting it shine. The small things that you love about life that make you happy and letting them shine throughout your entire life. That is the first step to properly moving on from a traumatic past. And hilariously, she's the one who takes that first step first, because we'll find out later with her reluctance to get back into joining the piano that she actually has a harder time moving on than Mark. But she's the one who starts this process by showing Mark that literally with the painting and figuratively that you can take a small, mundane, boring life that may be filled with crap and let something shine deep within it. Now that's all, kids. Stay cool, stay in school, and smoke lots of crack.
We then get our first flashback of Mark's mother, to where we see Mark watching his mother play the piano with a certain specific tune that's totally not important and is totally not a major plot point. We do not talk about the specific tune yet. We'll get to it. We get this sort of weird feeling from Mark that he's playing the piano to get close to his mother, or to feel close to his mother, who quit the piano to go work abroad so that they could make enough money so that Mark could pursue his dreams. It's almost like Mark is taking the piano as a form of grieving, if that makes sense. Afterwards, we skip forward to Mark going to the hospital with Luis and Sophia to visit Sophia's mother, because he promised to do that a while back when he first met Sophia. Upon visiting with Sophie, I don't know why I keep calling her Sophia. I'm pretty sure that game exclusively refers to her as Sophie. After he does that, he and Luis go to the cafeteria and they once again discuss the weird-ass memories they've been having. And it's here that Luis tells him that he's not alone in feeling these memories, and she hilariously pulls up r/get-it. Is that what it's really called? Yeah, r/get-it. Geddit. Get it. That is the best way to do a fucking knockoff Reddit. I can't even complain about that. That's hilarious. Anyways, in this post, a lot of people are talking about having similar visions to Mark, as if they're all fucking insane. But aside from that, afterwards, after Luis leaves him to get his food, Mark sees a boy playing with a plane back and forth, right? And he has a fucking mental breakdown.
No, it can't be. Bad omen. I gotta go back right now. What's this? No, I gotta get a ward. Yeah, what the fuck happened here? Whoa. What the fuck is happening? Yeah, I think Grandma's dead. Where's everybody? Flowers? What is happening? Oh, who's there? That's not a person. Oh, that is a person. This is your fault. Oh, it's some Filipino we don't understand. Yeah, it's just some Filipino shit. This happens all the time in the Philippines, you know. What? This is your fault. What do you mean? What did I do? This is your fault. I'm gonna, like, wake up, right? Yeah.
We find out, like, later that Luis's theory on it was that he had seen a memory of Nicole's and that somehow everyone's connected in viewing each other's memories. And that is Luis's theory on it. But that happens later. For now, Mark's having a mental breakdown and he's absolutely losing it. And unfortunately, straight after this, he has to head with a carnival with Riddell and Kathy while he's having this mental breakdown. At the carnival, the trio try to have fun, but as they all comment, it doesn't feel the same. It feels like, or rather, it's not that it doesn't feel the same. It all just feels like they're doing the same thing, and they both get bored. They all get bored pretty easily. And eventually, Riddell leaves halfway through to go do his producing thing. Distant Riddell strikes again. Because of course, leaving just Mark and Kathy. However, Mark also leaves because he starts to have a fucking mental breakdown again. He starts to feel his head pounding and things not right. And it's when he leaves that he bumps into Nicole, who, after bumping into, he starts to feel better almost immediately, strangely. And it's with Nicole that they go on a little romantic date, because they're two lovebirds at this point. And they go on the Ferris wheel, and Nicole discusses with Mark how she hasn't felt like this a while, and that she feels like she's finally living again, and that she wants to move on, just like Mark. And it's here that they start truly narrowing in on what it is to move on from your traumatic past.
I wasn't done something because I was there. No, not really. You know, Mark, I miss this. Miss what? Living. Living for real. For about a year in our lives. We're just getting by. What do you mean? You know the world almost ended, right? Everyone does. Wait. Don't tell me we're victims. That makes sense. Should have kept it a secret. No. I mean, honestly don't know what to say. Why keep it a secret in the first place? Beats me. Maybe we just want to leave the past behind, you know? Start anew, clean slate, and hope for the best. Sorry to hear that. It's nothing. Mark? Mark? No, not Kathy! Where have you gone, you airhead? If I were stupid, where would I go? But how would I know? Not being stupid has its cons. Mark? Yeah, I figured she would see. Yeah, that's about what I expected. Oh, that's awful. Stop it.
However, unfortunately, in Mark's excursion to go have fun with Noelle, and you know, them being a thing, he starts to leave Kathy behind. You see, he left Kathy alone at the carnival. She eventually ambushes Mark when he arrives back at his house, and it's there that Kathy slowly starts to discover that Mark's kind of obsessed with Nicole at this point. Like, what the fuck, Nicole? Or Mark? But it's fine. We can all enjoy two lovebirds, even though it's at the cost of best girl Kathy, unfortunately. It's because of this that Kathy starts to look very sad and depressed, and she lets him win at a racing game that he's never won at before. And it's here that we start to see a dichotomy of...
It's not a fucking dichotomy, you're an English major, you should know this.
What it means to be left behind. Because Mark is starting to move forward to a new life with Nicole. He's leaving his hard past behind him. But unfortunately, that means that Kathy is being left behind too. And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the fucking piano club. And if you're still with me, go ahead and take a fucking sweet drink, good God. It's time for the piano club, who is hosted by two seniors, Carl and Elise. And then in this process, Mark also finds two friends. Justin, whose main character trait is being obsessed with Elise, and Sam, whose main character trait is being obsessed with fucking music theory. They serve no purpose other than to provide a community for Mark in the story, unfortunately. But yeah, Mark decides that he's gonna try and audition for the piano club and meets these four wonderful characters. He also tries to convince Nicole to do so as well. On the first day, Mark plays a song that he's trying to remember from his mother, the one that she played during that flashback that we were showed, with the song that was totally not important, but we're just about to get to it. And in doing so, Nicole bursts through the door and starts looking aghast at Mark. She then hurriedly leaves and Mark tries to address her. And it's here to where we get to the big revelation. You see, that piece, it was actually written by Nicole when she was younger, and somehow Mark's mother had heard it, and it was memorable enough for her to learn to play it himself. And it was memorable enough for Mark that he wanted to learn how to play it as well. And he tries to play it from memory, from what he heard from his mother heard from young Nicole. And it's here that Mark kind of lets something slip. Mark admits that the reason why he remembers the piece to Nicole was because there was an event around it that made it memorable. We'll get to that. From here, Mark tells Nicole subtly that they could both move on from their past, and that it's time for them to, quote, find that spark. And this is when Nicole agrees to become Mark's piano mentor. And so the piano club montage ensues, and Mark gets really close to the piano club and him and Nicole start to really fall in love with each other. You know, hand-holding from mentor to student, normal things. It's clear this has had a very massive positive impact, as we see later that people start to take notice of this. Mark is much more attentive. He's actually doing his work on time. He seems happier. And most importantly, he seems to be moving on. He seems to be starting a new life. He even addresses this with Kathy, who says that she's rooting for Mark for his new life, and that she loves to see him happy like this, albeit bittersweet, because in this process, once again, Mark is leaving Kathy behind. He even also confesses to Nicole that he doesn't talk to his friends much anymore, and that they've been pretty distant, but that he's fine with that because he has the piano club now and he has this new life. It's here that the differences start to show. Mark is almost completely moved on. He has accepted a new life, one that he finds worth living. So, to recap, step one of how to move on is to make sure you find a life worth living. Surround yourself with people you care about. Surround yourself with people who care about you. Unfortunately though, the same can't be said for Nicole. Nicole confesses to Mark that she finds reservations about joining the piano club and that she doesn't really feel like she wants to do it. However, at the time, Mark convinces her to still continue doing it, and Nicole agrees because she is in love with Mark and wants to spend more time with Mark. Nicole also confesses that the reason why she's struggling to move on is her past life, and we'll eventually learn that the main reason is that she used to play the piano when she was with Jake, and Jake was always her #1 supporter, and now that Jake's gone, she struggles to accept that part of herself. But hold up, stop everything, fucking stop everything, stop the story. Luis has got a new theory about what's going on. Turns out, Mark's just fucking insane with all of his weird false memories, and so is she. She concludes that the false memories that they have is a product of the troubled mind. And Mark says that's bullshit, so Luis continues researching. That's it. We then shoot forward to Mark with Kathy. They're going on friendship hunting for prom dress outfits for their Greek god themed prom. God, if my prom was that interesting, it might have actually been worth going to. In any case, this is the point where we start to see the tears in Kathy's life. And we start to see stuff that I don't necessarily like. You see, Kathy deliberately says that she doesn't want to wear something short-sleeved or a dress that's too short. And that immediately started sending alarm bells to my head. I'll let Past Me explain to you why that is.
What about you? Didn't like the dress? It was gorgeous, but maybe something long-sleeved. Oh, I don't like that! I've wondered for a while now. Oh, God. Alright. Explanation time. That's a pretty... Always wanting long sleeves is a pretty telling sign for some sort of problem. Either it being abuse or cuts. Neither of which are good. Yeah. I hope I'm reading into this too much. But I get the feeling I'm not. Shit. Fuck.
In any case, they end up not being able to find anything, and so they leave the store, and it's here to where we start to realize that Kathy doesn't really have any passions either. Unlike Mark, who's picked up the piano and has found a new community, unlike Riddell, who has picked up his producing habits and his photography to the absolute limits, Kathy doesn't have anything like that. The most she has is just a couple of friends that are slowly moving away from her. Friends that are moving on while she gets left behind. Because she herself cannot move on from her trauma. And it's here to where we start to get a better idea of what that trauma is. Because Kathy's brother forcefully takes her out of the picture after they're done shopping and failing to shop. But before this though, Kathy decides she wants to try and pick up baking, so hey, maybe there's hope for her after all. We then jump forward to Christmas, to where Mark is lonely as shit. He's lying around doing nothing in his house. His father couldn't make it home, and he hasn't heard a word from his mother. Foreshadowing. Anyways, with any due regard, he tries to contact Riddell and Kathy and wish them a Merry Christmas, but neither of them respond. No one in his old life responds. It is then that he hears a knock on the door, and he is then jump scared by Nicole's family, his new life, people in his new life. And so he goes and spends Christmas with Nicole's family, and it's here that we still learn that Nicole might still have some reservations about moving on from her past, and that she wants to go back and visit her grandparents in her old neighborhood. But hold it, before we get to that, we got piano auditions to see if Mark gets into the fucking piano club. I don't know why the piano club is like so prestigious. I guess it's probably Carlo's fault, but like, why would a school club be this prestigious that they have to have like super strict auditions for this? Anyways, regardless, Mark passes, but then he learns pretty quickly that Nicole decided not to join. And so, naturally confused, he goes to ask Nicole why this is. And Nicole basically shows her apprehension to moving on. She doesn't really want to fully move on. She still has some reservations about the past. And she wants Mark to understand those reservations about the past and why she feels that way. Because she's not fully sure herself. She just wants someone to understand how she feels. And she doesn't realize that Mark perfectly understands how she feels. So Mark agrees to go to her hometown with her. But hold it. Before we get there, we have another Louis jump scare. You see, Louis has a brand new theory again about why everyone is fucking seeing weird crap, hearing weird crap, having horrific hallucinations, and why maybe even the ruling happened, you know, the important shit. You see, she thinks that there are ripples going about through the multiverse that are causing ruptures and universes that are causing these weird events, and that because of that, things are crossing over when they shouldn't. Does it sound absolutely insane? Yes, it sounds absolutely fucking insane. I think anyone who wasn't in a fictional setting would immediately call that as absolutely fucking insane. But she's studying quantum physics, so who can really blame her? She probably knows more about what she's talking about. This is totally not foreshadowing for what comes after. Anyways, Mark confides Nicole that for once in his life, he feels like he's in a good spot. He feels comfortable with this new life around him, and that he really is happy with moving forward, and feels safe in his feelings towards everything, to Nicole, to the piano club, and that he just wishes Nicole would feel the same. So Nicole decides to take him to their hometown, and romantic antics ensue, you know, the whole, you gotta lean on his shoulder. Yeah, Nicole pulls that shit on Mark. You see, this is where Mark starts to become a great guy. He's no longer the shitty lazy bum that everyone's pissed off about. It's also during the bus ride to their hometown that we start to see Kathy showing signs of moving on too. You see, we start to pick up the pieces that maybe Kathy and Sophie had met, and they're starting to hook up. Nicole, instead of going to her grandma's, takes Mark to her hometown, and it's all ruined from the ruling. And it's here that Nicole takes Mark to Jake's house, and she asks Mark if he understands how she feels, which is a fucking incredibly vague question, Nicole. And this leads to a huge fight to where Nicole thinks that Mark doesn't understand how she feels about what it means to move on and what it means to have past problems and trauma. And to which Mark, of course, shoots back at Nicole, saying that she's hardly explained anything about how she feels to him, and that it doesn't feel like she really wants to move on, to start a new life, to move past the past. And it's here to where they get it after the huge fight, they return home, and the big revelation occurs. It's here to where my claim comes into play. You see, throughout this entire game, Mark's been talking about his mother like this, on this pedestal, like, she's gone, but I can still pick up after her. And that she'll come home eventually and admire me. Well, it's here we learn that she went missing, likely about a year ago, maybe a little less than that. And that the flight that she was on to return home from Christmas disappeared. And that there's never been any sign of him. And that Mark is finally coming to terms with the fact that his mother is probably dead. She is probably not around anymore. And it's time we finally reach step 2 of moving on. And that is to where I bring myself to my claim. It's so clearly demonstrated throughout this entire time that Mark can't move on fully because of this one nagging thing. Because throughout this entire time, him and his father have been masquerading, playing with a subtle, small hope that his mother may be alive, that she's out there somewhere working her ass off to earn money, but that she just won't contact him for whatever reason, or that she's just so busy that she can't contact him. But it's fiction. There's nothing more to it than that. They haven't heard from her for a year, maybe even longer, maybe even shorter. She's probably not around anymore. And that burden, as time goes on, grows more and more heavy. And no matter how long they try to run away with it, it's only going to drag them down more and more and more. Their life can't move on without this acceptance. So when Mark finally accepts what happened to Mother, what happened to his mother, it is only then that he can truly move on, that he can truly live a good, fulfilling life. It's clear throughout this entire game that Mark is clearly burdened by something. He was lazy at the beginning. He didn't care about anything at the beginning because all he could care about was the burden he felt of his mother no longer being there. It's all he could think about. He tried to live this fiction, this unbelievably hard truth that he tried to avoid, that his mother wasn't there anymore. And now that he's finally accepted it, he can move on. And he can finally set an example for Nicole to move on. Because now, he truly is ready to embrace his new life. He's ready to embark on this new trip of his new life. And so that leads to prom night. So before prom night hit, oh my god. So before prom night hits, Jesus Christ, Mark sends a letter to Nicole basically explaining his mother and explaining that he does actually understand how she feels. And so they get together on prom night and finally they're both ready to move on, to start their new lives together. Except Kathy goes missing. Mark goes to try and find her. And trying to find her, it starts to rain. And he begins to get flashbacks of his mother. Really weird ones. To where his mother tells him that it's time to let go. It is time for him to let go of her as her mother. And it ends with her mother letting go of his hand and leaving in this weird flashback. And Mark finds Kathy, actually.
You found her. Hey, Kath. You came all this way for me? For your last dance? What are you doing out here? I can explain. I'll tell you everything. I should have seen it coming. It's only at that point everything fell into place. Am I too late? Last time we played that racing game, did I really win that match? Have I ever won? I didn't quite pick up what she said that day. Something like, she wants to be a racer. Or a sprinter. Is I paying enough attention? She once told me about butterflies in the rain. She said, yeah, that's a lot of fucking bruises. And you pat her. Or even, Mark? Mark! Oh, did I get hit by the car? Did I save her but get hit myself?
So after that, Kathy gets fucking isekai by a fucking truck. I can't say that with a straight face after such a fucking serious scene. So after Kathy gets hit by a truck, we move forward to Kathy's funeral. And everyone says their condolences, and so does Mark. And then you get to watch Riddell's film that he has been working on so long throughout this entire thing. And at the end, Riddell admits that he wanted him and Kathy to see it as a sort of remorse. And it's there that Mark explodes on Riddell, saying that he was never there. But Riddell counters that he wasn't ever really there for Kathy either, was he? And it's here that those two more than likely probably split. It's never explicitly said, but I'm pretty sure they split there. I'm pretty sure that's the end of that friendship. So in the process of Mark moving on, he had abandoned his former life completely. That's the unfortunate part about all this. While it does teach you how to move on, unfortunately, it includes the dire consequences that abandoning things as you move on can lead to. And then we jump very far forward in the future to where Mark is moving out of his house with Nicole helping him move. It's clear that they're likely college students, adults, whatever have you. They're much older now. And they're helping pack, and Mark finds an old CD, which when playing the CD, he finds that it was actually containing a message from Kathy, right as prom night was about to hit. And in this message, Kathy explains that she was feeling inspired by Mark and by Riddell about moving on, and that she wanted to join them in moving on. And that is the unfortunate part of this, is that the one part that Mark failed about moving on was helping those to go with him. However bittersweet it is, however sorrowful it is, it's so it's hard to discount just Mark's efforts on how he went just to move on from his trauma and how he brought Nicole with him. Unfortunately, he didn't bring Kathy with him. It's such a bittersweet ending, and it's perfect. Except, that's not the ending, is it? We're missing something here, aren't we? Whatever amounted of Luis's extensive research of the quantum realm and all these weird happenings, what the fuck was the ruling? Where is Kate? She was introduced like this super serious character, but then never had any screen time. All of these questions.
Okay, that's the credits. Continue? Yes. Is there something more?
This isn't over, is it? It is now day 2 of filming. It's currently raining right now. I'm not sure if that can actually be heard over on the mic. Maybe. This mic is pretty strong. But that's besides the point. I have now finished the game. My stance on what happened before doesn't change much, but it's time we start talking about what happens after. A lot of things are different once you hit continue, but you start off at the very beginning. But like I said, things are different. Immediately right off the bat, you'll notice things are off. For instance, your group project that you did with Luis and what was this? With Luis and Ryan is now done with Luis and Kathy, and it goes horrifically this time around. On top of that, when you get to Riddell, you notice that Riddell is actually not very successful in his movie career, and in fact, he's now spending much more time with you and Kath. And throughout parts of this chapter 2, you explore a bit of Riddell actually doing his project and trying to get his whole setup and get going with his filming. Hell, even Kathy's is the star of the show. But Apart from that, more dangerous things are different. For instance, Luis's friend Sophie doesn't exist anymore. She's been missing for a while, or no, not that they've been missing. I'm thinking of it different. I'm thinking of later. She isn't missing yet. She is here, but they're not friends anymore, which is strange. And on top of that, Luis is much more cold this time around. But you still learn about her experiments, and she actually has a new update on it to where now she's doing this double slit experiment with a laser to where it's supposed to show a certain way, but it's not showing that way that it's supposed to be, which leads Luis to think that there's an anomaly happening. You also begin to notice that things are a lot more accelerated. For instance, Mark opens up about his mother being dead, way early on, and he encourages Kathy to open up about her problems too, early on as well. Same thing with Riddell and his issues of producing, and this sort of creates a superficial bond and expectation. Kath encourages him to do the same for a later problem that he gets with Nicole, to where him and Nicole haven't talked for a while, and he wants to bridge that gap, but he doesn't know how to. And so Kath proposes the idea of just talking it out, and that it never hurts to talk it out, which it doesn't, but this is where a misunderstanding starts, to where Mark starts to think that he can solve everything just by talking it out. And that's not true at all. Mark is still just a 15-year-old. It's this time around too that we get to understand why Nicole struggles to move on so much in part 1, and that is because that there is someone she left behind too. That being Kate. You know, that girl that we were briefly introduced to and then she never showed up again. Well, yeah, guess what? Nicole and Kate have this long, deep-running backstory. You see, Kate is actually Jake's sister. I almost called her brother, fuck. She is Jake's sister, which Nicole and Kate were kind of close after Jake's passing, but the problem was Nicole couldn't move past Jake's passing, and so Kate got pissed off at her for it because she wanted to move forward and she felt like Nicole was just ignoring her and using her as grievance for Jake. And because of that, none of that ever got solved. So Mark comes up with a grand solution. They go back to find a scrapbook that Nicole made for Kate, and he's like, you can give this to her and then you can talk to her and you guys can make up. And that's exactly what happens. Around this time though, we go with Luis because she wants to investigate these weird anomalies again, and shit goes down and timelines start to break apart and you vanish for a bit, except your memories start crossing over a bit too, only for you all to come back and be perfectly fine.
Oh no. Oh no. Shit, did you feel that? Yeah, we better go. What the fuck? Luis? Is everything okay? I've never seen them fluctuate so rapidly. Did that cause the quake? Something's happening. Oh my god. Bye! I had a feeling she would disappear, but holy shit. Bye! What the fuck? No. Luis! Mark, what's going on? Oh. Holy shit, okay, we're all disappearing. Nicole? Alright, I guess we're all disappearing now. Luis? Nicole? What's happening? Is Mark gonna vanish too? Yep, I can't. Gone. Where are we going? I don't know, Mom. Never really liked him. Why not? He looks nice in your graduation pictures. He does. What'd it say? Are you ready? You're up next. Mom, he's still not here. Mom, maybe he's just not feeling well, alright? How do you know that? I just know. Do you though? We know where this goes. I have original composition and set. If that's alright. Okay, so she actually goes through playing it. And then now we get Mark's backstory of mother being missing. No. This can't be. And she wasn't there, too. I tried to... Mom. What? hell? What's going on? Didn't you hear me? It's Kath. We have to find her. Kath? Seen anything yet? Any trail? Footsteps? Tracks? No. Come on, we gotta keep this up. This rain will only get harder. Wait, hold on. Hold on? Are you being serious? What's gone into you today? You don't understand. Oh, really? Now I'm the one who doesn't understand? Riddell, please. My mom, she's coming home today. We all know that. You've been pretending you didn't care, but now you do? Mark! Let's go! Now! Got it. How? I'm not gonna question, but we got it.
This is all just foreshadowing for what's going to happen in part 3 of this. But that's besides the point. Afterwards, once again, they make up, and Mark thinks, well, everything's going to be fine now, right? We've all gone past what we struggled to do the first time. We've talked it out. Mark's talked to Kathy. Nicole's talked to Kate. So, nothing could go wrong, right? What happened last time won't happen again. So, prom night hits. You wanna know what happens again? Kath goes missing. Again. Only this time, instead of watching her die, we watch her disappear, and this time Nicole dies. Not Nicole. Luis dies from a fucking earthquake at the same time, which is... Honestly, I know it's meant to be sad, but I found it fucking hilarious. Just, oh yeah, a random earthquake hit to fucking spited Luis out of existence. Because fuck her, I guess. And would you look at that, though? Mark's failed. And this is where we get to the misunderstanding. Because right around here, you get the achievement quite literally called To Misunderstand. Basically, in part 1, you got the achievement To Understand, because Mark was able to successfully move on through X, Y, and Z reasons. But part 2 can't be said the same. Mark tried to go back in time and tried to fix things that can't really be fixed with just talking it out, or have underlying issues that Mark is not in a position to stop. For instance, Kathy's underlying issues of her parents. Like, what's Mark gonna do? In the end, he's still a minor, no matter how much he wants to believe he's not, no matter how independent he is. The best he can do is just offer allegiance to Kath. So, talking it out is not the solution to moving on. And that is how we weed out that part, that step, that possibility. So guess what? We get to try again and move on to part 3. In the epilogue, we get this really heartbreaking scene, really, honestly, to where we see Mark trying his hardest to recreate Luis's experiments so that he could disappear himself and maybe go back in time again. At least that's what I'm assuming he's thinking. And Nicole finds him trying to do this, and she tries to say, well, it ain't all bad. You still have me. You still have all of us. Things aren't horrific. Maybe we should just stay here and move on in our lives. Unintentionally parodying what they did last time. But this time, Mark's not having it. He can't move on this time. He can't accept that Kathy's dead because he's already gone back once. So he completely shuts down Nicole, and Nicole ends up breaking down herself. And the unfortunate part is they go back in time once more, and we start round 3 and round 4, round 5. From here on, the timeline starts collapsing because of what Mark is doing. But it's important to note, from here on out, Mark remembers everything for the most part. He fully remembers the previous timeline he has, to the point to where he remembers him and Nicole getting married in the first timeline in the epilogue. It's fucking wild how much he remembers, and he starts to realize that he's lived many times over and over and over again. This time around, instead of Mark waiting for Nicole to come by because she's a transferee student, he instead just plops open his message mark and begins to message her after his day of just doing basically the same thing again, just slightly different. And only this time, Nicole seems to remember him as well, and there's this weird spark. And in this spark, the world resets back to day 1, and Mark is in another timeline, and Nicole, and they both remember it. So Mark gets in contact with Luis, or at least tries to. From there, tries to formalize and strategize, but only Luis is a lot more aggressive on him once she realizes that Mark is remembering shit from different timelines. She basically asks him, like, is this, like, basically all you use me for? She asked if they were close in a previous timeline, and Mark says, kinda? And the implication here is Mark is realizing that this entire time he's basically just kind of used Luis instead of actually getting to know her. He's basically just used her for her experiments, for this knowledge, but that's besides the point. Luis gives the solution to their problems of the timelines repeating, and that is that they probably shouldn't see each other. And it's around here to where I kind of started having a problem with the game. I felt like Chapter 1 was the perfect conclusion to everything. Even if it was bittersweet, even if my favorite character, Kathy, died, it worked. And like, when Chapter 2 started, I was really surprised. But I was like, okay, sure, I'll go on. Let's see what we have here. And Chapter 3 is where I feel like there's a cross in messages in what the game is trying to teach you. But I'll get to that. So naturally, Mark and Nicole rebel against what Luis said. They try their hardest to shut down the hotspots of where the weird anomalies are happening by meeting each other there, because the action of meeting each other is what's causing a huge fluctuation in the timeline continuum. And they think that Luis is wrong. Nah, she couldn't be right about anything. That's bullshit. No, they gotta be right. They can do this together. So they're gonna try and shut everything down, except each time they do it, the world gets worse and worse and worse. It starts out small, different people are missing, and then it's like, oh, the ruling was much worse now, so now there's no school and everything's like pretty much ruined, or the ruling was so bad that they are literally living at the school because everything else is destroyed, to, oh, it's just Mark and Kathy with a campfire at the end. All because Mark can't accept that Kathy died, and Luis, well, she did have her happy ending with Kate and ending too, but wants to have that happy ending with Kate again. All because they can't move on. It keeps this cataclysmic cycle going downward and downward and downward as they keep restarting over and over and over again. And eventually we get to the point where there's nothing left. It's literally just blackness. And it's here that you start getting to see flashbacks. Well, they see each other's flashbacks. Mark sees Nicole's flashbacks of her life with Jake and Kate, and Nicole sees Mark's flashbacks of his parents. And it's here that we fully learn the extent of their regrets. Mark regrets living hostilely with his mother while she was still around because of the fact that she was leaving to go abroad to work. And since she died and he never got to see her again, it forever haunts him. And it's been a burden on him ever since. And Nicole, Kate criticized her for not truly understanding their family situation at home when she was still just a child. And Nicole carries that burden that she thinks that she never truly understood Jake, and they kept going and going. In the inevitable horrific end. It's here to where they start to enter this really weird world, to where they realize that these two butterflies that have been following them, that have been giving them, likely anyway, the ability to go back in time.
Yeah, so I'm back, idiots, and I figured it would be an important time to mention that there's another theme that I didn't fully realize about the butterflies because I know nothing about Filipino culture, but actually, butterflies in Filipino culture usually represent dead relatives. As such, it's taboo to kill butterflies or moths. So, yeah. The reason why they were butterflies is because of that cultural aspect, and that's why this part makes sense.
Were in fact Jake and Mark's mother. They basically tell Mark and Luis to forgive themselves, and that no matter how hard they try, what's in the past is in the past. Basically, they want them to forgive themselves. And that is the true final step to moving on, is to forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for what happened. Because in way too many situations, in traumatic experiences, especially when it's with people you love, people have a hard time thinking of what ifs, thinking that they were somehow in the wrong. When in reality, they just need to let go and live their lives. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, the game pushes this idea of Mark and Nicole need to separate to the end. So they say their last goodbyes after coming to this realization, and we reset to a completely different timeline to where Mark is actually able to save Kathy, and Nicole is able to save and be friends with Kate, but at a weird cost of that they never actually meet each other or get together. And it's here to where I get into some mild criticisms of that idea, in my opinion. So, in my honest, brutal opinion, while I love this game to death, and it was a great experience reading through from start to finish, Mark and Nicole needing to separate doesn't make sense in both a logical storyline and a philosophical messaging standpoint. And I am going to explain why. The whole idea of what we've built up to this point is that Mark and Nicole need to move on from their past. Except they did in the fucking first timeline. They were able, through the help of each other, to move on from their past, even at the cost of the bittersweetness of never getting close to Kate again or Kathy dying. But for some reason, the developers decided that for whatever reason, those two getting together and moving on in that first initial timeline was cause enough for the ruling to happen in the first place. Like people going missing, it doesn't make sense for them to all lump that in. Oh, it's because Mark and Nicole looked at each other once, in a very stupid way of putting it. Minus that, like, even from a messaging standpoint, why would you do that? Like I said, they established that together they were able to move on, and even though it's never directly pointed out in the first timeline or played through, they quite literally lived an entire life together. They got married. I think it's more than enough to say that they probably at some point learned to forgive their past selves for what they did in their actions, and that they talked it out, which I know is not like the intended part of part 2 is that just talking it out doesn't work, but they did so much more than just talking about it, is what I'm saying. They literally became a couple and they solved each other's problems through this. It doesn't make sense for part 3 to be all about, okay, they need to be separate to properly move on. Why? Them meeting in the first place is what propagated them to be able to move on in the first chapter. It doesn't make sense for them to suddenly be like, no, that's not true at all. I don't know, maybe I'm just not understanding something, but that is how I feel. From a story standpoint, it doesn't work either because, like I pointed out, putting the ruling on them is kind of a ridiculous thing to do when it's part of like the reason why Nicole even moved in the first place. Like Nicole moved there because the ruling happened. So like saying the ruling gets worse or like all of these people are going missing because of them and they're screwed up things that they're doing in the timeline doesn't make sense in that regard either. And I'm not totally banal against why they chose to do this either. I understand. They want to promote the message that if you're going to be in a better place, you should help someone else with a helping hand too. And I get that. And it is the biggest flaw with the ending of part 1 is that they didn't do that. It is a critical flaw that Mark didn't help up Kathy, or that Nicole never got with Kate, who clearly is lonely and didn't have any friends. It is an issue, but that doesn't take away the fact that in the terms of Mark and Nicole's story as themselves, as like their character growth and character arc, all that pretty much could have been finished in the first timeline. The first timeline was the best ending because it was bittersweet. It wasn't perfect, and that is what made it great. It made it so impactful. It pointed out the one mistake that they did so well, while also showing the great strides they went to become better people and to be better themselves and to move on from their past. But the developers basically they wanted their last laugh. For whatever reason, they decided that it needed to go on because they needed to give everyone a happy ending, not just those two. And again, I am saying this as someone whose favorite character to this was Kathy, and that a lot of the shit that Mark does to Kathy, especially later on when he's trying to fix everything, is fucked up. But that doesn't change the fact that the first ending for Mark and Nicole's storyline and for the messaging of the whole story made the most sense.
Jumping in here one last time to help clarify this too, but also it doesn't make sense in the other running theme that I only mildly addressed throughout this, and that is that there are some things you can't prevent in life and that you need to focus forward, or rather, more broadly, there are times to where your only option is to give up. You cannot force your way to fix everything. That is the running theme throughout the entire game from the very beginning to the very end, that Mark cannot fix everything regardless of how hard he tries. So why does it suddenly fix everything when they separate? That doesn't make sense. I could go on about, like, how great the first ending is compared to the final ending, but it's just something you kind of have to experience yourself of just how weird it is of how different the two endings feel. Because the first ending, although bittersweet, hits you like a truck. It's so impactful. But by the third ending, when everything's solved and perfect, the only gut punch was that they were separated at the end. But, like, is that really a gut punch if it doesn't even make sense in the first place? I don't know. I could go on and on about how I feel like everything would have been better if they just had focused on the first timeline to its fullest rather than going on with this whole timeline shenanigans. But that, I digress. It wasn't my decision. It's not my artistic piece. So they probably had a vision that I'm probably not seeing here.
Anyways, with that said, I'm gonna let Past Me take it away with the outro. It's fucking like 12 at night. I'm tired. I want to go to sleep. Bye. If you've made it this far, I want to thank you for watching. The first No Existence of You and Me video did amazing, and I cannot stress enough how great that felt. Like, I was tempted to not make that video. In fact, there's a poll on my channel of me debating whether or not to make the video or not. But I made the video, and it's so nice to see the effort that I put into it pay off. Now, I know this one isn't as philosophy heavy as that one, but I still think you guys get what I'm trying to get across here. In case it wasn't already obvious, I've been streaming the entire Until Then journey. It's a very fun and wholesome story. I recommend playing it yourself. In fact, there's a sort of a sequel / continuation coming in 2026 for it. I don't know when that is, but you bet your ass that when it comes out, I'm going to play it. I've loved this game to death. This game is also great too, much like the No Existence of You and Me. I love the art style of it too. I don't say this enough, but like some of these like visual novels have great art styles, and I love the blend of like 3D with 2D pixel graphics. It's really cool. Like, as someone who's dabbled into pixel art, I can appreciate it. Anyways, I want to thank you all for watching this. If you've made it this far, please say your thoughts on the story. I'd love to hear what you have to say in the comments. Thanks. And with that, it's time to go on a fucking crusade for the audacity the game has to make Kathy die.